Frank Strozier and his quintet with Cloudy and Cool. This is from his 1960 album, Cool, Calm, and Collected. Of course, Strozier is on alto sax, Billy Wallace is on piano, Bill Lee on bass, Vernel Fournier on drums. This is Leid Stories. I'm Nutrice Leid, and we are going to devote this program to anything you wish to talk about, knowing that, of course, today is the 19th anniversary of the 9/11 attack, in which we saw so much desolation. In my case, it was so close, too close for comfort for me. And I still am dealing with the consequences of it. Uh, we had It was traumatic, to say the least. It was traumatic. And I have a different view about these kinds of things. Death, tragedy, especially on a mass scale, because there's no way to really comprehend it. You just have to do the best you can to go through it. There's no formula, there's no panacea, there's no solution. There's only the resolution that you have to make up in your own mind that this atrocity has occurred. There are all kinds of reasons why, and most of them we will never know. But still, we have to see it in perspective. As massive as it was, at least from the historical point of view, it was not the most massive tragedy that we, as a human race, if you will, have suffered. There's no comprehending the enormous capacity that human beings have for committing evil acts. You can't make sense of it. There's no way to explain it. The only thing that we can do, if we can do it at all, is simply to come to terms with the reality of what has happened. We won't ever know why. We won't ever know the truth of it, ever. But we must go on with our lives. You know, people suffer incredible tragedies every day. And somehow they have to find the strength, the wherewithal, some kind of reason, even when there is no reason, to go on. We have not, in these last 19 years, we have not come even close to the truth of 9/11. That's my personal opinion. We haven't come close to it. And it is doubtful that we ever will. So we remain contented with the idea that we mourn because it is a tragedy of enormous proportions. But we are mourning in part for ourselves. We have to recognize that. We are so stunted. We are so inadequate in moments like this to fully comprehend what is going on. It will take a lot of time. But if it is the truth that we are seeking, we have to be prepared that that would take much, much longer than we could ever expect. We also must take into consideration that we, even though it's tragic, we still must decide for ourselves the place that it has in our hearts and minds. We must decide that for ourselves. Because as you know, so many tragedies have occurred, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And people don't have even one iota of concern about that. So this particular tragedy is being marketed to us as something extremely important and very different from the other tragedies that we also have to concern ourselves with. Because in the end, you can see the common thread of human beings unable to solve problems in a different way, completely unable to do it. So they resort to violence of extreme uh, impact. And then you start rating them. Well, is this tragedy worse than that tragedy? They're all tragic. As I speak, you and I know that in this land, there have been many 9/11 attacks on people who, without notice, without warning, were annihilated for the worst reasons you could even think of. All over the world, there have been 9/11s. But as they say, a tragedy is a tragedy when it happens to you. When it happens to others, it might be unfortunate, it might be inconvenient, it might be sad, but not a tragedy. It has been decided that this is a tragedy. And it is. After all, you had almost 3,000 fatalities, 25,000 people documented as injured. You had 343 firefighters killed, 72 police officers killed. But does that constitute the tragedy? No, it doesn't. The tragedy is, in the end, that human beings proved their limits to negotiating or living in peace and harmony by mutually agreed rules. They can't do it or won't do it. There's always something that gives one side or the other a reason to take extrajudicial action. We see it all the time. This, of course, was a spectacular event. because we were seeing it unfold in real time. But we seldom think about the years that this country, when it was not even formed as a country, went through interminable clashes. I can't say clashes because it suggests that two main sides, went at each other on equal footing. That was not the case. People were descended upon by others who felt they had the power and authority to determine life and death. And they gladly embraced it, enthusiastically embraced it. We know the historical record shows we had the US military actually bombing US citizens on its own soil, mostly Black. We had a long list of atrocities committed against the First Nations. Nobody even talks about it. It was just one of those casualties of history. But suddenly, this occurred and it was spectacular. It was a spectacular horror. I'm a victim of it. But I understand. I understand. I have some kind of perspective. So I live with the consequences of actions that have nothing to do with me. But I understand. We all have that kind of story to tell. We all have come face to face with it. We all have, in one way or another, suffered inordinate tragedy in our lives. And it has been planned by a divine order that you could cope. And you must cope as best you can. Still living as close as possible to your ideals. But also not falling into this trap of being conditioned on how to think, who to like, who to hate, what's the truth. The truth isn't yet out. We have no idea what the truth is of 9/11. And there are people still deceiving themselves thinking they know what happened. No, you don't. It would be quite some time yet, if at all it happens, that we will know the truth. In the meantime, we simply have to cope. And not so much about 9/11, the act itself, but what the instruction here is. And the instruction is to live differently, make up your own mind, be your own boss, be your own guide, and constantly pursue what we collectively call the truth. I call it reason. Constantly pursue reasons for things. Not that it is right or it's wrong, but this is just the reason that a thing happened. Sometimes to tragic effect, sometimes not. But we are in this world for a reason, and that's the best we can do. To seek the reason for things, to try to understand the reason behind what is happening, why people are doing what they're doing, the reason for poverty, the reason for violence, the reason for racism. What's the reason behind all of this? And it is the best we can achieve. It's the best thing. It's not the only thing, but it's the best. And there's nothing more than that. 888-874-4888 is the number to call today. This is our collective open forum, and you are able to speak on a topic that matters to you. Hopefully, you have gotten the message that you're being cultivated. Yeah, you're being cultivated in how to use this medium to maximum effect. This is the course that we've been doing. If you didn't get hip to it before, get hip to it now. It is not just an avenue, an outlet for the expression of your thoughts and feelings. It is also that you acquire skills, communication skills. That's what this program hopefully will encourage you to do. To know how to communicate. There's a science to it. And although we haven't gone point A, point B, point C, what we're saying is increase your awareness of how you use this medium to best effect. We have wasted a lot of the possible outlets that we could have had and still can have because we have been poorly trained. We think that it is enough that you get on the air and people hear you and you can say what you want to say. But when we look closely, is there discipline behind your thinking? Is there logic behind it? Do you give any indication that you have looked more deeply into the issue that you're talking about? Are we learning from you? Are you exercising the kind of care that you ought to so that you use yourself and the opportunity to communicate effectively? That's the difference between getting on and yammering just because, well, I'm on the air, I can say what I want. No. What we want you to do is to encourage yourself not to abuse a golden opportunity. When you are communicating, and this is called mass communications for a reason, when you are disseminating your thoughts, which are very, very valuable things, you should do it with authority and you should do it with evidence that it's not you just getting on the air and then you put your brains in gear. No, you should have an idea where you're going, what you want to say, what undergirds your thinking, and you therefore are demonstrating to all of us, and each person will be doing the same thing. You're demonstrating how to think publicly, how to communicate publicly. So even if you have just a few minutes to communicate a thought, you do a good job. You see, not just you get on and you start talking. That's not what this program is about. And I'm going to become a little bit more disciplined because I find generally, and this has been going on for years, that Americans really don't understand the value of mass communication. And they assume, well, it's just I call in and I get on the air. So what? If you have nothing important to say, why are you on the air? If you're not disciplined in your thinking, if you're not taking us logically through a sequence of your thoughts, so we can appreciate how you went from A to B to C to D and your conclusion, then you're not part of what this experiment is. It's not just getting on the air and yammering. That's what media generally allows. People yammering. We're now moving to another level, and everybody, you're going to have to ratchet up the deliverables. We want to see evidence that you have been reading, that you have been able to cite points or facts that buttress your opinion. We want to see a logical sequence in the development of your thought and your opinion. That's what we want to see. So that this becomes truly a forum for the exchange of opinions and ideas, but informed opinions and ideas. All right, enough preaching. Let's move on. 888-874-4888. Harvey from Berkeley, you are a living, breathing example, and I cite you all the time, whether you know it or not, of how to communicate effectively by making a point. You state your large point, and then you buttress it with facts and figures. You don't have to, preach to us all day about it, but you cite those things that are important to legitimize your point of view, and then, you leave it up to us to decide whether we believe you or not. But you're up first. Thank you for calling in.
Well, I think you're fantastic, and and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for talking about and encouraging us to keep our neighborhoods clean of trash, especially during this distressing and depressing time of the coronavirus. And I have been following your more than excellent advice, and just about every day of the week, I head out into my neighborhood with my pickup stick and my paper shopping bags to clean the trash. And guess what? To my surprise, I've discovered a very interesting fact. We always see pictures in newspapers and so on of street people sitting in squalor, and we think they're the major contributors, but they're not. People who really put out the most trash and just throw it into the streets, it's your average American man, woman, and child. And what I've noticed in my neighborhoods is that local supermarkets, they sell hot food and sandwiches to their customers, and their customers take it out to their cars in the parking lots. They eat the hot food and beverages, and they throw out all the trash out of their car onto the parking lots, onto the streets, and because they don't want all that single-use plastic once it's been used in their car. And they throw it like single-use food packaging, plastic cups and straws, plastic beverage bottles, plastic utensils, forks, spoons, and knives, saran sandwich wraps, aluminum beer cans and beverage cans, paper sales slips, paper napkins, plastic produce and shopping bags, cigarette butts, and the list goes on. And our landfills are overflowing with all this single-use plastic stuff. And the national supermarkets and fast food restaurants, they take no responsibility for the trash that they generate once they get their profit. And it's we, the taxpayers, who are picking up the tab for all this extra plastic trash for the collection and disposal of it. So we are paying, but we're paying through our tax dollars. And the Trump administration and the fossil fuel companies have increased the amount of single-use plastic throwaway trash, containers and so on and so forth, because they're selling less gasoline, so they're using their fossil fuels to make more plastic. And they said they want to really up the all the countries are saturated with it. America used to sell all this plastic trash to Asian countries. They won't take it anymore, and they're turning to Africa now to pollute Africa with all this single-use plastic trash. So I want to thank you once again for motivating us to keep our communities clean and trash-free, and it's so important to our good health and our collective strength in creating a better world for us, our children, and future generations. I want to thank you, Utrice.
Thank you, Harvey. You always enlighten us because you give us some background and we can of what it is you're suggesting. So thank you for your many contributions in that regard. Thanks. Jean from Maryland, you're on the air.
Thank you, Utrice, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
I want to commend you. It's very clear that you've been working very hard this week, and I want to commend you for that, and note that I really enjoyed the single sentence exercise earlier this week. I thought was really creative, and I would request that you do more of that.
All right. Well, thank you.
You opened up today talking about violence in your monologue, and it occurred to me that it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "My own government is the greatest purveyor of violence." And in Gary's program just before yours, he read a piece from Chris Hedges, which talked about, and there was one sentence where Chris Hedges said that violence is the opiate. And that really forced me to think about, A, what an opioid is, what it does in the brain, and how it relates to violence. And the violence that we see, the violence that we do, the violence that we report, and the violence that we live in many cases. And I'm thinking that as an opioid is taken in by the body, metabolized, and then begins to depress areas of the brain so that you can't think, so that one does not have the benefit of rational thought. And the violence follows. And there's a certain level of contagion that goes along with it, where it is communicated from person to person and group to group. And there are different points of marketing that go along with it that justifies the violence and makes it all right. It is something that I think we should explore and look at its use and try to better understand its purpose. I mean, it's not so easy. It's easy enough to simply say, yes, violence is used for profit. And we know that that's true. But I think there's more. And I would be interested in exploring that and pulling that apart so that we can really dig down and understand what violence means.
All right. Well, thank you. Good idea. Thanks a lot. Russ from West Palm Beach, you're on the air.
Okay, good afternoon. I've been listening to you all week, and I've heard a couple of the shows where people were calling in with, we're looking at our current situation with COVID, and we're looking at all the political representatives that we have looking out for us, supposedly. And a lot of the issues that were raised, I thought were legitimate issues. It's just that my frustration is I think that we need to remind ourselves that we have to prioritize. And I think you can get lost in all these local issues and issues that are pet projects that you might feel that you've always had an interest in, and you kind of hold on to them. And then we get thrown these new situations like COVID. And I think everyone has to be prepared to just let go of what it is that you thought was a priority and start focusing on what should be the new priority. And I was glad to hear you bring up 9/11 because I have not forgotten about 9/11. In fact, and I did call you up once before about this, but as soon as COVID showed up on the scene, my immediate intuitive reaction was this is a continuation of 9/11. And I know a lot of people they have an aversion to anything even remotely sounding like a conspiracy theory and such. But I think your explanation of the way we should think critically and analyzing things and, taking our emotions out of it, I think is very important because it's very easy to dismiss things when you always say, oh, conspiracy, you're one of those conspiracy people. But I just quickly, if you look at the two situations, they're very similar in a lot of ways. I think you'll remember when 9/11 happened, we were told an explanation for why the buildings went down. And then there were a lot of people who didn't buy into that explanation. I'm not going to dwell on this because I know it's something a rabbit hole you could go down forever. So just quickly, a couple of the important things to remember. There were a lot of professionals, in this case, architects and engineers, that were not adopting the official explanation. Now, they
I
had
did a couple of programs on that.
Oh, I'm sorry?
I did a couple of programs on that theme.
Right. I'm sure you may have done that. Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't there for that. I don't know what you might have said. But based on your...
No, I interviewed the leading architects and engineers, and they explained how the popular explanation just does not fly. It flies in the face, in fact, of the science of it. And it was a fascinating exchange in that they were opposed and were demanding a worldwide, a global examination of how they explained the attack, how the official explanation of the attack on Wall Street just does not hold up.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I think it's important to see the parallels between that event and the COVID event. We are now being, because there's a lot of controversy surrounding the COVID event, and much the same, there's a lot of technical issues that the general lay public do not understand, that they rely on the Faucis and the Birxes and the media to clarify for them that aren't necessarily true. But they go along with those presumptions, and then before you know it, we're lost that we kind of just skim right over all that stuff, assuming it to be true, and then we start dealing with local economic issues, stimulus checks, mask wearing, fights that go on in the stores, who's right, who's wrong, and all that stuff, which might seem important to people in their immediate lives, but you can easily lose sight of the big picture. And I think it's really important. Once again, I think they're very technical issues. That's a similarity between 9/11 and the COVID, way beyond the typical layperson's ability to understand viruses, how they spread, where did this come from? What is the role of if you look at the background of Birx and Fauci, they go way back in the military-industrial complex, way back. We're talking decades into bioweapons. Then you look at all the patents that people have and who stands to gain by this. I mean, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that should cause very large suspicions in the minds of people about the legitimacy of this official explanation that we've been given, much the same as 9/11. And if you look at both major events, you'll see a very globalist nature to the aftermath. We were told after 9/11 that this is going to be a terrorist war that's going to go on for decades, the war on terror. We're being told similar things about the virus. Mr. Fauci is always going, he's always rattling on about, and he does change all the time, which gives him even less credibility. But the idea that this is going to go on and on and on, and, we don't know what the next one's going to be. They may have another virus, and they may be softening us up for the next one. And it just bothers me that even all the corporations and such are making all these adjustments, and they're kind of breaking us down. This is the new normal. And I'm like way back at first base. I haven't accepted a lot of what they're telling us, yet they want us to start, thinking about all the things that we're going to do to now live with COVID. This is the new normal. Just like the terrorism and the war on terror, we have to give up our rights for the airports and all these things that they're going to throw at us. And I think if you look at the connection between the two events and you see the similarity and you see who's running the show in both of these situations and how globalist in nature it is, I think you have plenty of reasons to be very suspicious of what the official authorities are telling about this.
I think you have a point, a very good point. But I also think that we observe and learn in the meantime, learn as much as we can and observe, because it is extremely complicated. We don't have to really repeat that. We know it's a complicated situation, but it is important that we simply get into as much research as we can, read as much as we can before we start, really mounting an offensive. Thank you so much for your call today.
Okay.
Thank you. Bill from New Jersey, you're on the air.
Good afternoon.
Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes, now I can.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I called it. Good afternoon to you. I called in to speak on what I feel is the folly of this a lesser of two evils voting that seems to be, not today, but seems to be the talk day after day. Lesser of two evils. We have to do this. This is what we have to do. It's so scary that Donald Trump will get reelected that we have to vote for the other guy that we know is evil. I even heard a caller call in and say that Donald Trump is Satan and Hitler, and if he gets reelected, there'll be death camps in America. I'm like, wow, the fear is so palpable. So representative government is what I called about. Representative government means that you vote for someone that will represent you, that will do what you would do if you were in Washington. It's not, you don't vote for someone because it's not a popularity contest. You don't vote for them because you like their personality, that you don't like the other guy's personality. The campaign is a job interview. This person says, I will represent you. I will do what you would want me to do. And if 87%, for example, of the Democratic voters want Medicare for all, the candidate should not have the right to say, no, I will not give you that. That's what the electorate wants. You're supposed to represent them. You're supposed to do what they want you to do, not what you want to do or what your wealthy donors want you to do. That's not representative government. And this lesser of two evils, well, I have to vote for one of them. If, to the single ladies out there, if you had two suitors, two men propose marriage to you, both were evil in your knowledge, both evil. One is a physical abuser and one is a verbal abuser. Do you marry the one that is the verbal abuser because he's the lesser of two evils, knowing that he's evil? Or do you say, I'm not marrying either one of you. I'm going to hold out for a better man. I'm going to do for myself until I find a better man. I'm not going to choose evil to marry or to vote for. You, in a job interview, you certainly wouldn't hire someone. If someone came to you had a business and someone applied for a job managing this business, which is essentially what a president is, a manager. If they came to you and they presented their resume and their job history, and their job history was bad and their resume was bad, and they told you, I will not run your business the way you want me to, the way you want to. I will run it the way I want to. Then you would not hire them. I know your father had various businesses. Could you imagine him hiring a guy that had been a failure at every other management job he ever had and told your father, I won't run the business the way you want me to. I won't treat your customers the way you want. I will do it the way I want. And still hiring him? No, you wouldn't do that. It's ridiculous to vote for someone that won't do what you want them to do. Julian Assange was asked during the last campaign or early in the last campaign because it was perceived that he was trying to get Trump elected or he was against Hillary Clinton, and he was asked, which one do you want for president, Clinton or Trump? And he said, that's like asking me whether I want syphilis or cholera. I don't want either one, and I'm not going to actively try to get either one. And voting for either one is, you wouldn't vote to get syphilis. You wouldn't vote to get cholera. You would say no to both. And until we say no to this duopoly, we will never have a third party or a fourth party or a fifth party, because no truer words have ever been said than power concedes nothing without a demand. And what is a demand? A demand is not a request. A request is, I would like you to give me this. And, oh, no, you won't give me that? Okay, all right, well, I guess I don't get it. A demand involves a inherent threat. A demand is, you will give me this or else. You will give me this or else. That's what a demand is. So if you say to your candidate, you will give me health care or else I will not vote for you, that's how you get change. You have to be willing to not vote for someone in order to get what you want, or you will just continue to get the same. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
A different
So
result.
that's the definition of insanity. So if you do this lesser of two evils, less over and over again, and you expect to get a different result, that's insane. You have to break that cycle, and you can't live in fear that, oh, well, next time I'll vote for what I want. Not this time. It's too dangerous this time. Next time. Next time never comes. There's always this fear. We can't live in fear. You can't make decisions out of fear. No decision made out of fear is ever a proper decision.
Amen. That's all I have to say. Amen to everything you said. Right on the money.
And
thank you, Bill, for your call
everything.
And your contribution today.
You're quite welcome.
Ed from Jamaica, you're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon, Trees. How are you?
Okay, how are you doing? You and your thumbs, hanging in by your thumbs.
At least I'm consistent. I just wanted to bring up the fact that being this the 20th anniversary of 9/11, how...
Actually, it's the 19th anniversary.
I thought it was the 20th. Oh, excuse me, 19th. Forgive me. How history is being rewritten in certain little ways. There's a commercial that comes on radio and television. I'm not going to say what legal firm it is, but they're one of those firms that represent 9/11 victims and people who worked on the pile. I was actually downtown when the event took place, and I came after, assisted on the pile. And this commercial has, I guess they're saying that these people that are talking worked on the pile. They were first responders and people that volunteered to clean up. And one of the gentlemen says that, I knew it was dangerous when I worked on the pile. And people are forgetting, Christine Todd Whitman was the head of the EPA. And her, Giuliani, all of them were urging us to come down there and to help out and work. And it was safe. And they were telling us it was safe. I worked there for a couple of weeks. By the grace of God, I haven't had any ill effects as of yet. I also had a respirator, proper protection based on my military experience. But we can't forget how this government used the people of this city specifically and across the nation in a time of strife and lied to us, just like it's happening now. And how history gets rewritten and people get forgiven for their lack of respect, for their lack of compassion, for their lack of concern for the common people. And this is why I always try to remember. I tell people, check your history. Remember what really happened. Because as time goes on, facts get distorted, stories get twisted, and heroes and villains become heroes, and right becomes wrong. And this is where we're at now with this presidency and this situation that this country is in. We've been lied to so frequently and so often that we take it as nonchalant. And it's not correct. It's not correct. And until we hold these people accountable to what they do and their actions, they're going to continue and manifest into what we have in the White House today, a perpetual liar who can lie just as easily as I can change my underwear. These people have no integrity. They have no character, and they need to be eradicated. And we must remember this after this election, after this pandemic. We must remember that the truth, no matter how hard it is to accept, always must be put forward. And we can't allow history to change.
All right. You terrified me there with the word eradicated.
Well, that's how I feel. These people have no respect for human life. I mean, they lie frequently just to increase their means, to increase their status, to increase their pocketbooks. And I'm tired of it. I mean, personally, I'm tired of it. You should not get away with it. I wouldn't be allowed to get away with it. The law should apply to everyone. And when you put people's lives in jeopardy just because you want to achieve a goal or just because you want to increase your coffers, you're a worse criminal than the guy on the street. At least the guy on the street robs you straight up and down. These people rob you under the pretense of being your protectors, your helpers, and your benefactors, and the garbage needs to cease.
The question, though, is that their fault, or is that our fault for allowing it to happen and contributing even to that? With all the things that you've said about Donald Trump, which are true and have proven to be true, there are people who still will not concede that he's a liar, an inveterate liar, and now he lies about lying.
I mean, it's partially our fault because, like I always say, the price, and it's a quote. I don't know who made the quote initially, but the price of democracy is eternal vigilance, and we haven't been vigilant. We haven't held these people accountable. We haven't presented the credible threat. Politicians should be afraid of their constituency, and politicians should have a limited life. You come with a goal. You come with a set of objectives based on your constituency. You achieve those objectives, then you move on, and you let somebody else get in there. But it should be an act. It should be an act. That's why there was a limited time on the House of Representatives. That's why there was a limited time on senators. That's why there's a limited time on the presidency. That's why there's a limited time on all public officials, because you shouldn't get comfortable there and make that your career. You're there to represent the constituency and to push what the constituency wants you there for. Once their job is done, move on.
Amen.
And make room for somebody else.
Thank you. Wow, we're getting some lessons today, folks. I hope we are paying attention. Thank you so much. David from Brooklyn, you're on the air.
I have my latest post on YouTube, Brother David from Brooklyn Speaks, and I speak on the healthcare industry and some elements of it. And what I talk about, it's not really a healthcare industry, it's a sick care industry. That's how they make their money. And I speak about defending yourself against the industry. You have unscrupulous doctors who do unnecessary surgery all the time. You have an EMS system that does wrong by taking people to the wrong hospital for their condition. Every hospital is not the same. Some are not designated to do certain things. For example, I talk about in New York State, the state health department has designated hospitals in all the counties that are designated to treat people, for example, for strokes. They call them stroke centers. They have a neurologist on staff and a team to handle someone who looks like he's having a stroke. And there are EMS people, depending what you look like and how much they care, that would drop you off at some inadequate hospital that can't handle your case at all. I also speak about in his post on Brother David from Brooklyn Speaks about the issues with women. Women have to be very careful with their gynecologists and so forth because there are doctors that are looking to cut up women all the time with these hysterectomy operations and so forth, and many of these things are not really needed. And in the post, I let people know and women know about organizations like the Hearst Foundation in Pennsylvania that is not for abusing women, but can give you a consultation, and also they have their doctors who are not surgery happy to give people hysterectomies that don't need them. So it's very important to understand that this industry makes money when you are sick. We're talking about the pharmaceutical industry. We're talking about the hospitals. We're talking about a lot of the doctors, and most of all, the insurance industry. So one has to be alert to what's going on. You can't just go and fall for the okie doke. There are many doctors out there who will do a surgery on you that you don't need. I can speak by personal experience. And the point is that people have to be aware and up to date on what's going on and put the brakes on this sick care industry. So if they want to hear more about it, they can listen and look at my YouTube post, Brother David from Brooklyn Speaks.
All right. You've done a good job with your own commercial. Thank you, Brother David. And that brings us to the end of our program today. I'm very pleased because content-wise, we are hearing what this program is supposed to do. Provide a space where information, solid information, can be exchanged, people can express their views, and not waste time on the air. But we are lifting ourselves up and becoming more proficient at being mass communicators, because each of us, if we take that role seriously, we would cut into the burden that we leave to all these organizations to do the outreach. And we should be effective at spreading the word about whatever needs to be heard and whatever needs to be told. So we need to brush up on our skills. I am always so proud to be in your company. And people sometimes say, but you're not saying very much. I am listening. I have my notebook. I'm making notes. I am taking very good care to listen to what is being offered. And I must say, and this is not just to make you feel good, but I must say that we offer a lot in terms of content, just person to person. And that's the big revolution right here. Person to person contact with solid information that people can rely on and think about. And perhaps it would help you change your mind. Perhaps it would influence your thinking. And perhaps it would open up new vistas for you. You go to the library and you do some more research. But I want to thank you very much for the privilege of being in your company and sharing this time with you, and proving how important it is to use mass communications in this way. Thank you so much. It is the weekend. Surround yourselves with people who add positive dimension to your life. Have some fun, relax a little bit, and we'll see each other again, hopefully on Monday. Bye-bye.